The Nigerian Economic Summit Group hosted its third edition of the 2019 Macroeconomic Outlook Report presentation in Lagos, which brought together economists, policymakers, and business leaders. It focused on the theme steering Nigeria through the inclusive growth pathway. What strategy should the government adopt?
If we do not have an inclusive growth, we're going nowhere. The security situation will be even much worse than what we have now. And we can't have all our people so poor. We can't remain the poverty capital of the world. Nigeria has to be serious about its growth, and this growth must be inclusive. Thank you very much.
The world is growing rapidly. The world is becoming extremely digital. We're not educating our people for the direction the world is growing. We're not educating our people for the level of development that we require. So we need to focus on education. And then medium and small scale industries, encourage the private sector. We need to ensure that we encourage investment flows into this country, not just allow, encourage, actively encourage. We need to get plenty of new capital coming into our economy and coming to the right sectors of our economy, agro-processing, for instance, those areas of the economy that touch the lives of the poor people. We can't continue having just 1% of our people very wealthy and the rest of our people very poor. It's not going to work.
The head of research, Dr. Olusegun Omishakin, had an interactive session with stakeholders on the report.
I think just like we've discussed the essence or the need for an inclusive growth in Nigeria, we think there is need for a deliberate actions from government with respect to first intervention in the sectors, and then secondly intervention in the social sectors. For instance, we don't have a present running and broad holistic national plan, Now, not to talk of the state's planning that are well integrated into national level, such that we can track the goals, the objectives, and other outcomes all together. And again, we don't know what is going on in the social sector. Everything is just the picture is just so bad. So we think that the government can deliberately intervene into the activities of our education sector, our health sector. For instance, instead of clamoring, saying, okay, we want to increase the expenditure by this on education or health, why can't we have a program or a framework that tracks how much we spend and what is the outcome? If you keep spending money without a desired outcome, you won't know whether you are doing fine. And World Bank introduced this a long time ago, and many other countries are using this. So I think NESG believes that in answering the question of what type of growth, the growth for whom, and then what are the outcomes, we need to look at our national planning, we look at the state levels and the local government, and then we need to look at the social dimension of the policy.
In his remarks, Dr. Doyin Salami, a notable Nigerian economist and head board committee on research, NESG, called for an enabling business environment for private sector participation and investments in human capital.
Legislation, regulation, policy, and a mindset in government that says the private sector can and should be encouraged, not even should be allowed. There's a difference between let's allow them to do it and encourage them to do it. It's not about domestic capital, it's capital, whether it's domestic or it's international. Why would international capital come if domestic capital is leaving? So for me, you need these in order to be able to, just imagine, sake of argument, $100 billion a year. Sake of argument, really sake of argument. Nigeria was getting $20 billion of inflow into infrastructure. That changes the whole currency debate. It changes the whole reserve discussion. It changes a whole lot of stuff. I'm not saying that it's not fraught, that it has no downsides of its own, but this can be managed. I keep telling people, Nigeria today is where China was 40 years ago. 40 years ago, 8 out of 10 Chinese were poor. Today, less than 2% of China's population is poor. And the Chinese reckon that within the next 2-3 years, they would take all their population out of poverty. And so these are the kinds of thinking that must help us define and push for a vision. So for me, it's extremely, very, very important. Seriously, this country has no business growing at 2%. It indeed, I would argue, has no business growing at 6%. How does it take us 12 years to build a rail line and we haven't finished? How does it, you see, all of these are the issues. Education is the second sector that I would point to as being an enabler for Nigeria. The world, I don't know how many of you are following WEF. About a week or two ago, they published a list of jobs that are going to be relevant 20 years from now. Guess what? It's not the jobs we're doing today. And so if our education can't even suit today, then imagine how less suitable it is for the future. So for me, until and unless, my attention was drawn to the fact that when I was planning to go to secondary school, admission into a government college was it. That was what we were all chasing. It doesn't matter whether it was a federal government college or a state government college. As long as it wrote government college, you really wanted to be admitted. But today, nobody is interested. Because what has happened to us in 30 years of education, I draw attention. In the 1960s, what has become UI was the fourth best tertiary institution in the Commonwealth. It is said, and I don't know how true, that Saudi royalty used to come to UCH in Ibadan. Today, UCH is one of the centers for cancer treatment. But the machine. So all of these are things that must change. So for me, power and education are sine qua non. It's not arguable. We don't do them, we are not going very far.
Dr. Olusegun Omishakin speaks on the key highlights of the third NESG Macroeconomic Outlook Report for Nigeria.
The key points there is that first, we don't need to keep going the way we are going, believing that things will change. No, we've been growing in a way that makes the economy to be just sustaining at that 1.8, 1.9 or 2% all through since the fourth quarter of 2017 till now, third quarter of 2018, we've not had an encouraging growth. Everything has been below 2%, and that is a signal, if care is not taken, to another scenario of recession. We are hanging on oil price and oil production. Presently, the outlook for oil price is not that encouraging, maybe around below 60 or very close to 60. Again, the production, because we already have to comply with the OPEC cuts, so, and then we don't have the capacity within to even go fully with the production, coupled with the election period and some of the dimensions or dynamics in the oil sector and the oil region. So these are the foundations or assumptions that may downplay the prospect for growth for Nigeria. So beyond looking at that growth, so we then need to look at, okay, the growth should be for a purpose. What are the outcomes in social sector? What are the outcomes in health? So these are the major key points or highlights of this report. And so we encourage the government to take a more deliberate decisions and action in intervening in industry and then in the social sectors.
Mr. Asue Igodalo, Chairman NESG, also shared his perspective on the value of the forum.
The way Nigeria needs to progress is that we need to determine the growth rate that we require to go into an emerged economy framework. We need to determine the growth rate and we work backwards. So if it's 12%, if it's 13%, and it's doable. And I think that's where we need to start from. Government and government thinkers and government policymakers and government economists need to start from there. That's fundamental. We can't continue at this growth rate that is below population growth. You know, we're moving backwards. We're perpetually in a recession. We can call it mini recession, little recession. we can call it anything, but it's a recession. For as long as our people, the population growth rate is much more than the rate at which we're growing as a country, then we're in trouble. So we need to deal with it. We need to determine the growth rate that's appropriate for us and then work towards achieving that growth rate. It's not counting. It's paying attention to those things that free up our market, those things that encourage investment, those things that ensure that the things that are important to catalyze the growth of our economy are in place. So we're not counting, we're not measuring. Like I said before, we need to start from the answer. We need to determine at what rate do we need to grow, and in what sectors do we need to grow to ensure that Nigeria becomes an emerged and growth-focused country in as quickly a time as possible. That's the key. Are we giving ourselves 10 years? Are we giving ourselves 15 years? Are we going to try and do it in less time? But what do we need to do? So we all need to come together and determine what we need to do and put our hands on the plow and do it.
A key takeaway from the third NESG Macroeconomic Outlook report is the need for Nigeria to focus on attracting private capital to address the issues of infrastructure and increase investment in education for inclusive growth and poverty reduction.